They told me family helps family, that I should do the right thing and pay off my sister's $40,000 debt. I didn't fight. I didn't protest. I just paid it quietly and then mailed the full invoice to her husband, complete with receipts. Because if I'm going to clean up her mess, he deserves to know exactly what he married. My name is Jessica Miles. I'm 36 years old, and my life is a carefully constructed fortress of solitude and order. I live in a condo in San Antonio where the sun bleaches the hardwood floors and every object has its designated place. The throw pillows on my gray sofa are always symmetrically karate chopped. The books on my shelves are organized not by author, but by the color of their spines, creating a soothing visual gradient. My dog, a perpetually sleepy golden retriever named Gus, is my only chaotic element, and even his chaos is predictable. A heavy sigh at 10 p.m., a gentle paw on my face at 6 a.m. This order isn't just a preference, it's a defense mechanism. At my job as a senior project manager for a large construction firm, I am paid to foresee problems, to create budgets and timelines that tame the wild, unpredictable nature of a building site. I bring that same energy home. In my world, if there is a problem, you create a plan, you execute it, and you solve it. My life is a spreadsheet of manageable risks and predictable outcomes. This system has served me well in every area of my life except one, my family. With them, I am not a project manager. I am a resource, a utility, the emergency fund that never runs dry. With them, all my rules and plans dissolve into a fog of obligation. For as long as I can remember, I have been the emotional and financial backbone of the Miles family. Not because we were destitute, far from it. We were solidly middle class. My father, Dan, worked in logistics, a man who understood supply chains but not emotional nuance. My mother, Susan, was a school administrator, skilled at managing unruly children but willfully blind to the manipulations of her own. They were loving, in a functional, hands-off way, but their love for my younger sister, Melanie, was a different thing entirely. It was a blinding, all-consuming light that left me in the shadows. Melanie was the artist, the dreamer, the one with the dazzling smile and a personality that could charm a snake out of its skin. I was the practical one, the steady one, the one who was good with numbers. From our earliest days, the roles were cast, the script was written. Melanie created the messes, and I cleaned them up. It started so early that I can't recall a time before this dynamic was set in stone. The most vivid, defining memory is of the broken vase. It was my grandmother's, an ornate, frankly hideous porcelain thing with hand-painted violets that my mother cherished above all other inanimate objects. I was 9 years old, sitting on the living room floor reading a book. Melanie, at 6, was a whirlwind of restless energy. She was trying to climb the built-in bookshelf to retrieve a doll, using the edge of the white mantelpiece as a foothold. I remember the slight wobble, the faint scraping sound, and then the sickeningly final crash as the vase hit the hardwood floor and exploded into a dozen glittering shards. Melanie's face, flushed with effort just a second before, crumpled. Her mouth opened in a silent O of pure terror. Then came the sound, a piercing wail designed to signal catastrophe. My mother came running in from the kitchen, her hands dusted with flour. Her eyes went from the porcelain fragments to Melanie, and a look of hot, sharp anger flashed across her face. It was a look I rarely saw, and it made me feel cold with fear, not for myself, but for my little sister. Before my mother could utter a word, I scrambled to my feet. "I did it," I said, my voice a small, tight squeak. "I'm sorry, I was running." And I bumped the shelf. The lie came out so easily it scared me. My mother's anger didn't vanish, but its target shifted. It softened, curdling into disappointment aimed at me. "Jessica, you know better," she said, her voice strained. "You're the older one. You have to be more careful." I was given a stern lecture about responsibility and sent to my room for the rest of the afternoon. As I walked away, my shoulders slumped with the weight of the lie. I glanced back. I saw my mother kneeling on the floor, wrapping her arms around a still sobbing Melanie, stroking her hair. "It's okay, baby," she whispered. "It was an accident. It's okay." I sat in my room, listening to the quiet murmur of my mother's comfort and the distant sound of the dustpan, and I understood my function. My job was to be the shield. My job was to absorb the impact, to take the blame, to be the sensible, responsible one so Melanie could remain the blameless, beloved one. It was the first time I consciously paid for one of her mistakes, and it would set the pattern for the next 27 years. In high school, the currency of my sacrifice shifted from blame to actual cash. Melanie wanted to go on the annual class trip to France. It was all she talked about for months. The Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, the French boys. She didn't have the grades to qualify for the school's scholarship, and my parents claimed money was tight. I was 16, working 20 hours a week at the public library, carefully saving every dollar. My goal was a 1988 Toyota Camry, a boxy but reliable car I'd seen on a used car lot for $2,500. It represented freedom. It represented an escape. The family meeting happened on a Sunday night after dinner. It wasn't a meeting. It was an ambush. "Jess, honey," my dad started, "we know how much you've been saving." "It's really impressive," I beamed, thinking he was going to offer to match my savings. "And we know how much this trip means to your sister." He trailed off, looking at my mom. My mother picked up the thread. "Melanie would be the only one of her friends left behind," she said, her voice laced with manufactured tragedy. Melanie sat there, her bottom lip trembling slightly, a masterclass in silent manipulation. "It's just that you're so good at working, at earning money," my dad continued. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime cultural experience for Melanie. You could buy a car any time." I looked from face to face. They were all looking at me, their expressions a mixture of hope and expectation. My little savings account, my hard-won independence, was being framed as a selfish indulgence when compared to my sister's dream. The next day, I walked to the bank with Melanie. I withdrew down $200 and handed it to her. She hugged me, squealing with delight. "I'll pay you back, I swear," she said. I knew she wouldn't. I spent another year catching the bus to my library job, watching the Camry disappear from the lot. I did get scholarships for college. I worked my way through, graduating with honors and zero debt, while Melanie dropped out after 2 semesters at the local community college to find herself. This journey of self-discovery was apparently very expensive. It involved a series of failed ventures, each funded by my parents and, increasingly, by me. There was the online boutique selling handcrafted jewelry. I gave her $5,000 as seed money, a significant chunk of my post-graduation savings. The money vanished into website design fees, expensive packaging, and a massive inventory of beads and wires that sat in our parents' garage for years. When I asked about it, Melanie would just sigh dramatically. "The market is so saturated, Jess. You wouldn't understand the creative struggle." The first major financial entanglement, the one that truly tied my fate to hers, was her first car. She wanted a cute, sporty convertible, and of course had no credit or income to secure a loan. I was 23, living in a tiny apartment, and fiercely protective of the credit score I was meticulously building. They came over for dinner, my parents and Melanie, an intervention in reverse. They sat on my secondhand furniture and laid out their case. A car would give her independence. It would help her find a real job. It was an investment in her future. "It's just a signature, Jess," my father said, waving his hand dismissively. "You're just helping her get started. It's what family does." My reluctance was a tangible thing in the small room. I felt a deep, instinctual resistance, but their combined pressure was like a physical weight. I was being selfish. I was holding my sister back. I was not being a good daughter, a good sister. Finally, exhausted, I gave in. I co-signed. 2 months later, the first notice arrived in my mail. A missed payment. My stomach twisted. I called Melanie, who launched into a long, convoluted story about a bounced paycheck from her waitressing job. "I'm so sorry, Jess. It's so embarrassing. I'll handle it on Monday." Knowing a late payment would stain my own pristine credit, I went online and paid it myself. It happened again the next month. I eventually set up an automatic transfer from my checking account to the auto loan company, a silent monthly deduction from my life to subsidize hers. She paid me back in sporadic, small amounts, always with a story about how she was totally broke. I was so focused on protecting the numbers on my credit report that I didn't see the larger pattern solidifying around me. I was no longer just the fixer. I was the financier. Years passed. I built my career. Melanie met and married Tyler, a genuinely good man who worked in tech and saw only her curated perfection. He was kind, stable, and completely snowed. He believed she was surprisingly frugal, a line that made me want to laugh and cry every time he said it. I watched from a distance as her Instagram feed filled with a life I knew she couldn't afford. A life I now suspected was being funded by more than just my quiet subsidies for her car payment. The weekend trips, the designer clothes, the constant brunches. I knew her part-time job at a boutique couldn't cover it. I just didn't know the true, horrifying scale of the deception. Not yet. The beginning of the end started with a letter, tossed on my counter with the junk mail. It was from a company I'd never heard of, Meridian Financial Services, and it was addressed to me. It looked official, but I assumed it was a sophisticated scam. I shredded it. A week later, another one arrived, this one with a red, urgent stamp. Annoyed, I ripped it open. It was a formal notice of delinquency on an account, threatening collection activity. I frowned, my project manager's brain kicking in. This was an error. I ran a credit check on myself, something I did every 6 months. My score was still 812. Excellent. This had to be a mistake. I shredded the second letter too. Then, the call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at my desk, deep in the comforting certainty of a budget report. The phone buzzed, displaying an unknown number with a Florida area code. Hello? Yes. Am I speaking with Jessica Miles? The voice was male, professional, and utterly devoid of warmth. This is she, I said, my pen hovering over a spreadsheet. Ms. Miles, my name is Arthur Vance. I'm calling from the Collections Department of Meridian Financial Services. We're calling regarding a delinquent account that has been escalated for resolution. We've sent 2 prior notices by mail. The name of the company clicked into place. I believe I received those, but they were sent in error. I don't have any. Accounts with your company, ma'am, he said, his patience already wearing thin. The account is a personal loan opened 3 years ago. We also have a credit card on file with a significant balance. Both are tied to your social security number. That's not possible, I said, the words feeling thin in my mouth. A cold dread, horribly familiar, began to creep up my spine. The personal loan was co-signed by you for a Ms. Melanie Miles. The credit card is in your name, with Melanie Miles, listed as an authorized user. The pen dropped from my hand, clattering onto the desk. The world tilted slightly. I never co-signed a loan, I whispered, and I never opened a credit card for my sister. According to our records, Ms. Miles, the man continued, his tone unyielding. The signatures were provided electronically. Years ago, you were listed as an emergency contact and authorized user on a smaller, now closed account for your sister. It seems that pre-existing authorization was used to secure these new lines of credit. Given the severity of the delinquency, we are now legally obligated to pursue payment from you. How much? I asked. The question felt like it was being pulled from my lungs. There was a pause, the clicking of a keyboard. The outstanding balance on the loan is $23,450. The credit card is maxed out at $15,000, plus accrued interest and late fees. The total amount for immediate resolution is $41,274.58. $41,000. The air left my body in a single silent gasp. I leaned back in my chair, the solid wood of my desk feeling like a flimsy prop. It wasn't just the amount, a figure so large it seemed unreal. It was the calculated, long-term nature of the betrayal. This was a secret she had kept for years, a parallel financial life lived under my name. I need you to send me everything, I managed to say, my voice trembling. Every statement, the original agreements, everything. Of course, Ms. Miles. I have your email on file. The email arrived in my inbox with a soft chime that sounded like a death knell. I opened the PDF attachments with a sense of morbid dread, and there it was, a chronicle of fraud, my name at the top of every page. I scrolled, my heart pounding a sick, heavy rhythm against my ribs. The credit card statements were a tour of her lies. A $2,000 charge from a boutique hotel in Napa she'd posted about, captioning it, "Best anniversary surprise from my hubby." There was a recurring monthly charge for a high-end gym she claimed she got a corporate discount for through Tyler's work. There were thousands of dollars in charges from department stores, day spas, and restaurants I knew Tyler didn't frequent. There was a charge for $8,000 from a designer furniture store, dated 2 weeks before she and Tyler hosted a housewarming party where she boasted about her amazing vintage finds. The personal loan was even worse. The purpose was listed as debt consolidation. She had already been in so much debt 3 years ago that she'd needed a loan, and she had forged my name to get it. And then she had proceeded to rack up even More debt on the credit card. My hands were shaking. The shock was giving way to a white-hot rage. I had been her sister, her protector, her safety net, and she had taken that trust and used it as a weapon against me, systematically, for years. I felt like a fool, a $41,000 fool. That evening, I drove to her house, the PDFs open on my passenger seat like a dossier for the prosecution. I was going to get a confession. I was going to hear her say it. The rage that had been my fuel on the 40-minute drive to Melanie's house cooled to a hard, dense knot in my stomach as I walked up her perfectly paved driveway. The house was beautiful, a modern 2-story brick home in an upscale development where every lawn was a pristine carpet of green. It was the physical manifestation of the life she had presented to the world, and I had unknowingly paid for a significant portion of its contents. Tyler's car was gone, but Melanie's white SUV, the one I had helped her get a down payment for 5 years ago, was parked in the driveway. She opened the door with a bright, welcoming smile, the kind she reserved for guests she wanted to impress. "Jess, what a surprise! Come on in." She was dressed in expensive-looking silk lounge clothes, her hair perfectly styled in loose waves. The house smelled like vanilla and clean linen, a scent of manufactured tranquility. She led me into the living room, where the plush, cream-colored sofa I'd seen on the fraudulent statements sat facing a large flat-screen TV. It was even bigger and more opulent in person. "Is Tyler here?" I asked, my voice flat, refusing to let the calm of the house soothe me. "No, he's at a work dinner tonight. We have the place to ourselves. Want some wine?" She was already moving toward the gleaming stainless steel kitchen, her movements breezy and carefree, as if this were just any other Tuesday night. I didn't follow her. I stood in the entryway, my large purse clutched in my hand like a shield. "Melanie." She stopped, her hand hovering over the wine fridge. She sensed the shift in my tone, the coldness that cut through the warm air. She turned around slowly, her practiced smile faltering. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I've seen worse," I said. I reached into my purse and pulled out the thick sheaf of papers I had printed. I held up the top page, a credit card statement with my name. On it, a purchase for an airline ticket to the Caribbean highlighted in lurid yellow. "I got a call today, Mel, from a collections agency called Meridian Financial. They seem to think I owe them $41,000. The color drained from her face. It was a dramatic, visible transformation. Her mask of effortless perfection didn't just crack, it shattered, leaving behind a look of pure, cornered panic. She stared at the papers in my hand, then at my face, and her eyes immediately filled with tears. It was an instantaneous Pavlovian response. The waterworks were always her first line of defense. "Oh my God, Jess," she whispered, her voice breaking on cue. "I was going to tell you. I swear I was." "Tell me what?" I asked, taking a step forward. My voice was low, but carried the weight of years of repressed anger. "That you committed fraud? That you used my name, my credit, my entire financial identity to take out loans and credit cards and then just didn't pay them?" She took a wobbly step toward me, her hands outstretched in a gesture of supplication. "Are you sure? Are you sure it's that much? Maybe there's a mistake." She tried a different tactic, her eyes wide with feigned confusion. You signed something for me years ago, for the car. Maybe this was part of that? You're always so busy with work, maybe it just slipped your mind." The sheer breathtaking audacity of the suggestion almost made me laugh. It was gaslighting of the highest order. "Slipped my mind?" I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to control it. "You think I would forget signing my name to $41,000 of your debt? Do not play dumb with me, Melanie. Not today." The fake confusion dissolved, replaced by a torrent of excuses. Okay, she cried, the tears now streaming down her cheeks, streaking her expensive makeup. "I was desperate. It was just a little bit at first, I swear. I was going to pay it right back. But then the car needed new tires, and Tyler's birthday was coming up, and I wanted to get him something nice. It snowballed." She collapsed onto the bottom step of the grand staircase, a heap of silk and sorrow. "I just thought I could handle it. Please, Jess, please don't be mad. You're my sister." That was the line, the one she always used, the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card, the phrase that was meant to erase all transgressions, to remind me of my sacred, unbreakable duty to her. "You're my sister," as if that simple biological fact was a contract I had signed in blood, obligating me to a lifetime of cleaning up her messes, no matter how catastrophic. "Don't," I said, my voice dangerously low and steady. "Don't you dare use that. You didn't act like a sister when you forged my name. You didn't act like a sister when you watched me work 2 jobs in college while you shopped. You didn't act like a sister when you let this debt spiral out of control, risking my entire financial life, the one thing I have worked my whole life to build. As I spoke, I saw it all with a devastating clarity. The broken vase, the France money, the car, the failed boutique. It wasn't a series of isolated incidents. It was a single, unbroken pattern of exploitation. She looked up at me, her face a mess of tears and mascara. Her fear was real now, but it wasn't the fear of having hurt me. It was the fear of being exposed. "Please," she begged, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, a sound I knew all too well. "Please don't tell Tyler. It would destroy him. It would destroy us. He thinks I'm so good with money. He would never understand. He would leave me, Jess. I know he would. Please, you can't ruin this for me." And there it was, the real terror. It wasn't about the debt. It wasn't about the profound betrayal of my trust. It was about preserving her perfect life, the one built on a foundation of my money and her husband's ignorance. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was asking for my continued complicity. I looked down at my crying, pleading sister, the architect of my latest and greatest financial disaster, and for the first time in my life, I felt absolutely nothing for her. No sympathy, no rage, no pull of familial duty, just a cold, hard, barren emptiness. The fire of my anger had burned out, leaving behind nothing but acres of ice. I had spent my life protecting her, enabling her, absorbing the consequences of her actions, and this was my reward. A $41,000 bill and a demand for my continued silence. "I'll handle it," I said, the words feeling foreign and detached, as if spoken by someone else. Her face, which had been contorted in fear, flooded with an immediate, shameless relief. "Oh, thank you, Jess. Thank you," she sobbed, reaching for my hand. I pulled it away. "I knew you'd understand. I'll pay you back. Every single penny. I promise." I knew she wouldn't. I knew she couldn't. But I said it anyway. Not for her, but for me. I said it to prevent the legal damage from spreading, to stop the collections calls from Mr. Vance, to protect the credit score I had so painstakingly built. I would handle the debt. I would stanch the bleeding. I would clean up the mess. But as I turned and walked out of her beautiful, deceitful house, I was beginning to realize that cleaning up the mess and hiding it were two very different things. The first was a financial transaction. The second was a moral one. And I was no longer sure I was willing to make it. The days that followed were a masterclass in family manipulation, a coordinated campaign to manage me and ensure my silence. The news that I was handling the situation had traveled quickly from Melanie to my parents. My mother was the first to call, her voice a soft, soothing balm of practiced relief. "Oh, Jessica, thank you," she began. "Melanie told me what happened. I'm so glad you're taking care of it. You're such a good sister." I was sitting on my couch, staring at the framed photo on my mantelpiece, a picture of me and Melanie as children, smiling, gap-toothed grins. It felt like a relic from another lifetime. "She committed felony fraud, Mom," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "This isn't like she forgot to pay a phone bill." "I know, honey, I know," she soothed, completely steamrolling over the gravity of my words. "She made a terrible mistake, a big one. She's just so overwhelmed, and you know how she gets. She's not strong like you are. She feels just awful about it, she really does." There it was again, the narrative they had all agreed upon for 3 decades. Melanie was fragile, creative, overwhelmed. I was strong, practical, capable. Her weakness was an excuse for her behavior. My strength was an obligation to accept it. "What she feels," I said slowly, "is not my primary concern right now. My concern is the $41,000 hole in my finances and the fact that my name is attached to a defaulted loan that could ruin me. And you'll handle it, sweetie. You always do," she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Then came the real point of the call. "The most important thing now is that we keep this within the family. Tyler is a good man, but he doesn't need the stress of all this. It would just create unnecessary drama. Melanie is so worried he'll find out." A few days later, my mother showed up at my condo unannounced. A clear escalation. She had a Tupperware container of my favorite, chocolate chip cookies, her traditional peace offering. "I was just in the neighborhood," she lied, breezing past me into my kitchen. "I'm just so worried about Melanie. She's not eating. All this stress isn't good for her. She just keeps crying." She placed the cookies on my meticulously clean counter and looked at me with pleading eyes. You're doing the right thing, you know, protecting her. I'm protecting myself, Mom, I said, my voice hard. And my credit. It's the same thing, she insisted, her brow furrowing with frustration at my stubbornness. We're a family. We protect each other. You are strong enough to weather this. She isn't. My father called that evening. His approach was different, less about emotional soothing and more about appealing to a sense of grim duty. Jess, your mother told me you've stepped up, he said, his voice heavy. Good girl. Look, what Melanie did was wrong. We know that. But she's your sister. Family is family. You don't throw someone to the wolves over a financial blunder. A financial blunder? Dad, it's grand larceny, I shot back, the legal term feeling precise and satisfying. He sighed, a long, weary sound he used whenever I was being difficult or dramatic. Don't use that kind of language. The point is, you have the means to absorb this. For you, it's a setback, an inconvenience. For her, it would be the end of her marriage, her whole life. You wouldn't want that on your conscience, would you? Just take care of it quietly. We'll all put this behind us. Each conversation felt like another brick being placed on my chest. They weren't asking, they were telling. The decision had already been made for me. My role was assigned. I was to be the silent savior, the keeper of the family's darkest secret. The pressure was immense, a suffocating blanket of expectation and guilt. For a fleeting moment, I wavered. Maybe they were right. Maybe it was just easier to pay it, to swallow the loss and move on. It would be cleaner, quieter. It would make the phone calls stop. But then I thought of Tyler, a good man who went to work every day while his wife secretly burned through a fortune he knew nothing about, and the wavering stopped. The act of paying the debt was a quiet, soul-crushing affair. It was a violation. I had to liquidate a significant portion of my stock portfolio, the one I had been carefully building since my first real job. I sat at my laptop for an hour, staring at the screen, at the blue-chip stocks and index funds that represented years of skipped vacations, careful saving, and disciplined choices. There were the Apple shares I'd bought with my first big bonus, the Vanguard index fund that was my never-touch retirement egg. They were supposed to be for a down payment on a bigger house one day, or for a comfortable future where I wouldn't have to depend on anyone. They were my security. They were my future. With a series of sickening clicks, I sold them. I watched the numbers on the screen shrink, a digital representation of my future being siphoned away. Then, I initiated the wire transfer to Meridian Financial Services. The confirmation screen popped up, the number stark and brutal, $41,274.58. Gone. Sent out into the ether to erase a mess I hadn't made. I closed my laptop and sat in the silence of my condo, the quiet calm of the room feeling like a mockery of the storm raging inside me. I had done it. I had cleaned up the mess, and I felt utterly, completely alone. The breaking point, the moment. The ice in my veins finally began to crack and refreeze into something sharp and dangerous, came a week later. My mother insisted on a reconciliation dinner at my parents' house. To clear the air, she'd chirped over the phone, and to thank you properly, to move forward as a family. I knew it was a terrible idea, a trap, but I went anyway, a small, foolish part of me, the part that still clung to the idea of a normal family, still hoped for a genuine apology, a real acknowledgement of what had been done. The moment I walked in, I knew it had been a mistake. The atmosphere was thick with forced, brittle cheerfulness. The air smelled of roast chicken and denial. Melanie and Tyler were already there. Tyler, handsome and happy and completely oblivious, greeted me with a warm hug. Jess, great to see you. Mel tells me you've been a huge help with some financial planning stuff. Super grateful for you. I glanced at Melanie. She was smiling, a perfect picture of innocence, but her eyes darted away from mine. Financial planning stuff, that was the story she had spun for him. The lie was already in place, and my payment, my sacrifice, was the concrete foundation holding it up. Dinner was excruciating. I pushed food around my plate, the conversation buzzing around me like white noise. Melanie was in full performance mode, talking animatedly about a new yoga studio she was trying. My father complained about his golf game. My mother praised Melanie's new haircut. It was a perfectly normal family dinner, which made it all the more grotesque. We were all sitting on top of a $40,000 secret, and I was the only one who seemed to be suffocating under its weight. I was mostly silent, offering one-word answers when spoken to directly. I felt like a ghost at the table, invisible. The fixer, having fixed the problem, was now expected to fade into the background. Then, my mother, while clearing the plates, smiled at me with genuine warmth, a smile of approval for a job well done. She said the words that would change everything. "You know," she said, her voice light and casual, addressed to the table but aimed directly at me. "Melanie's just lucky to have a sister who cleans up so well. It's a good thing we can keep this all between us and move on." Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud, violent break, but a quiet, clean fracture. The final thread of obligation, of ingrained family loyalty, of the 9-year-old girl who took the blame for the vase, it just severed. I looked around the table, at my father nodding in agreement, at Melanie offering a small, grateful smile, as if she were the beneficiary of a minor act of kindness, at Tyler, looking on with a pleasant, uncomprehending expression. They weren't my family in that moment. They were co-conspirators in my subjugation, and I was their willing accomplice. I realized, with a clarity that was both terrifying and liberating, that I wasn't helping anymore. I was enabling. I was hiding their lies. My silence wasn't keeping the peace. It was subsidizing deceit. My financial stability wasn't a blessing. It was a gag order they had all agreed I should wear. I carefully placed my napkin on the table next to my half-eaten plate of food. "Excuse me," I said, my voice startlingly steady and calm. "I have to go." I didn't wait for a response. I didn't look at their confused faces. I stood up, my chair making a soft scraping sound on the wood floor. I walked out of the dining room, grabbed my purse from the entryway, and left, closing the front door quietly behind me. The cool night air hit my face, a shocking, welcome relief. I stood on their driveway for a moment, taking a deep breath that felt like the first real breath I had taken in weeks. The weight on my chest, the suffocating pressure to be the good sister, the good daughter, was gone. It was replaced by a cold, hard, and liberating resolve. I got in my car, but I didn't drive home. A new plan was already forming, a project plan, clear and logical and precise. I knew exactly what I had to do next. I was done cleaning up their mess. Now I was going to document it. I drove away from my parents' house, the scent of roast chicken and betrayal clinging to my clothes. There was no rage, no tears. The emotional storm that had been brewing inside me for weeks had finally passed, leaving behind a strange and profound calm. It was the calm of a battlefield after the battle is lost, and the victor has gone home. I had lost. I had lost the fantasy of the family I thought I had, or at least the one I was supposed to want. And in that loss, I was suddenly, shockingly free. My mind, usually a chaotic swirl of anxiety and obligation when it came to my family, was now a place of crystal clear, cold logic. I was a project manager, and a project had been initiated. Objective, truth. I didn't drive to my quiet, orderly condo. My home was a sanctuary for peace, not for war. I drove to the one place where I always had absolute control, where every problem had a logical solution. My office. The downtown building was a dark monolith against the night sky. I swiped. My access card, the soft click of the lock echoing in the cavernous empty lobby. My footsteps were the only sound as I walked through the deserted cubicles to my corner office. The view from my window was a blanket of city lights, a million separate lives burning brightly, none of them aware of or concerned with mine. Here, I felt anonymous and powerful. I turned on my computer, the familiar hum a comforting sound. This was my territory. I began to assemble my evidence, not with the frantic anger of a victim, but with the methodical precision of an auditor. I logged into my bank account and downloaded the PDF confirmation of the wire transfer to Meridian Financial Services, $41,274.58. The number no longer made me flinch. It was simply a data point. I downloaded the credit card statements again, all 18 months of them. I took a yellow highlighter from my desk drawer and, with a steady hand, began to mark the most egregious purchases: the $8,000 sofa, the $2,000 weekend in Napa, the $1,600 handbag. Each yellow slash was a mark of confirmation, a fact being entered into the official record. I printed the original loan agreement with the forged electronic signature, circling the part where my name was used to guarantee her debt. It was a stack of paper nearly an inch thick, a heavy, tangible record of her lies. Then I opened a blank Word document. The blinking cursor on the white page was an invitation. For a moment, I was tempted to pour all my anger and hurt onto the page, to write a scathing letter full of accusations and pain, but I knew that wouldn't work. An emotional letter could be dismissed as drama, as hysteria. An emotional letter could be argued with. A factual report could not. So, I began to write, my tone deliberately neutral, polite, and professional. Dear Tyler, I am writing to you because I believe a person deserves to know the truth, especially within their own marriage. I apologize for the impersonal nature of this communication, but I felt a direct, factual approach was the most respectful way to handle a difficult situation. Over the past few weeks, I have been dealing with a significant financial situation created by Melanie, one that she has deliberately hidden from you and our family. On date, I was contacted by a collections agency, Meridian Financial Services, regarding a severely delinquent account under my name. After investigation, I discovered 2 sources of debt. The first was a personal loan for $23,450, taken out by Melanie 3 years ago, which I had no knowledge of but for which my information was used to co-sign. The second was a credit card, opened under my name and social security number, which Melanie had been using for personal expenses. The total outstanding balance on these accounts, including interest and fees, was $41,274.58. To prevent legal action against me and protect my own financial standing from further damage, I paid this amount in full on date. Attached to this letter, you will find copies of the following documents for your review. 1. Confirmation of the wire transfer settling the full debt. 2. The loan agreement. 3. 18 months of credit card statements with notable purchases highlighted. I paused, reading the words over and over. They were cold. They were clinical. They were perfect. I finished the letter with a simple, honest closing. The words that had been forming in my mind ever since I walked out of my parents' house. I am not asking you to repay me. This is not about the money. I am asking you to see your wife clearly, because I'm done covering for what she hides. Sincerely, Jessica. Miles. I printed the letter, signed my name in clear, firm script, and placed it on top of the stack of highlighted documents. I slid the entire package into a large manila envelope. It was heavy. It felt like it was full of stones. I drove to a 24-hour post office, the envelope sitting on the passenger seat like a silent companion. I paid for certified mail with signature confirmation, addressing it not to their home, where Melanie could intercept it, but directly to Tyler's office. The postal worker looked at me with bored indifference as she weighed the package. To her, it was just another piece of mail. To me, it was a declaration of independence. I took the receipt and walked to the mail slot. As I pushed the thick envelope through, the soft thud it made as it landed inside sounded like a gavel striking down a final judgment. The secret was no longer mine to carry. The truth was out of my hands. The week after I mailed the letter was the quietest week of my life. The usual low-grade anxiety that hummed beneath the surface of my days was gone. I went to work. I walked Gus. I slept through the night. I was not anxious about the coming explosion. I was becalmed by the certainty of it. It was the quiet confidence of a project manager who has submitted her report and is simply waiting for the stakeholders to read it. The truth was in transit. The storm broke exactly 7 days after I sent the package. It was a Wednesday evening. I was on my yoga mat in the middle of my living room when my phone, lying face up on the floor, began to vibrate violently. The screen lit up with Melanie's name. I looked at it, my heart giving a single hard thump against my ribs. I breathed out slowly and didn't answer. Immediately, it started again. Melanie. I silenced the call. A second later, a text message notification appeared. Then another and another. A frantic, desperate barrage. How could you? Tyler knows everything he left me. He packed a bag and just walked out. My life is over because of you. You are a jealous, evil monster. I hate you. Voicemail alerts followed. The phone buzzed and lit up relentlessly, a frantic beacon of chaos from a world I was determined to leave behind. Out of a detached sense of curiosity, I listened to the first voicemail. Melanie's voice was unrecognizable, a raw, hysterical shriek that tore through the calm of my condo. Jessica, you bitch! How could you? How could you do this to me? To your own sister? Tyler left. He packed a bag and he just left. He showed me the papers. He knows everything. You've ruined my life. You have ruined my life. You were always jealous of me. Always. You couldn't stand to see me happy. You will pay for this. Do you hear me? You will pay. I deleted the voicemail. I listened to the next one. It was more of the same. Sobbing, screaming, accusations. She never once mentioned the debt. She never once acknowledged the lie. In her version of the story, she was the innocent victim, and I was the villain who had torn her perfect world apart out of pure malice. I deleted them all. Then came the email from my parents. The subject line was simple. How could you? The body of the email, written by my mother but clearly a joint statement, was a masterpiece of disappointment and wounded accusation. Jessica, Melanie just called us, completely hysterical. We don't know all the details, but we know that you went behind our backs and told Tyler everything. After we all agreed to handle this as a family, after you promised you would take care of it, I have never been so disappointed in my life. Your father and I are shocked at your capacity for vindictiveness. You chose to destroy your sister's marriage rather than show a little grace and compassion. Family is supposed to protect each other, not attack each other. You have been selfish and cruel, and you have broken this family apart with your actions. We don't even know who you are anymore. I read the email twice. My hands were perfectly steady. The words, which a month ago would have shattered me, now felt like nothing more than a final, desperate attempt to pull me back into their drama, to hand the shame back to me. I refused to take it. I typed a simple reply, the calmest, most honest words I had ever written to them. I didn't do this to her. She did this to herself. I just told the truth. I hit send. Then, with a sense of profound finality, I went into my contacts and blocked Melanie's number. I blocked my parents' numbers. I opened up our family group chat and clicked Leave Conversation. Each action was small, digital, but it felt like building a fortress, stone by stone. 2 days later, an unknown number called me. I hesitated, then answered, my voice wary. Jess? It's Tyler. His voice was quiet, strained, not angry, just hollowed out. Hi, Tyler, I said, my own voice just as quiet. I got your package at the office, he started, and I could hear him take a deep breath. I'm staying at a hotel. I've been going through it all. I wanted to say thank you. The words hit me with a force I didn't expect. I had braced myself for anything. Anger, blame, a demand to know why I hadn't told him sooner, but not gratitude. I'm so sorry you had to find out that way, I said sincerely. Don't be, he said quickly. You did the right thing. For months, Jess, for years, really, I've had this feeling, this little knot in my gut that something was off. The numbers weren't adding up. She'd talk about deals she got, bonuses I never remembered giving her, but I trusted her. I loved her. I never would have looked. I would have been blindsided years from now, probably in a much deeper hole. He paused, and his voice was thick, with a grim realization. You didn't ruin anything, Jess. It was already ruined. You just turned on the lights. What you did took incredible guts. We talked for a few more minutes. He told me he had filed for legal separation. He said that when he confronted Melanie with the documents, she didn't even try to deny it. She just cried and asked him how he could abandon her. The truth, it seemed, was a language she didn't speak. After we hung up, I cried. Not for them, not for my broken family, but for myself. It was a cry of pure, unadulterated relief. The validation from Tyler was a balm on a wound I didn't even realize was still open. I hadn't been crazy. I hadn't been cruel. I had been honest. The aftermath settled into a new, strange reality. Through a cousin who remained bravely neutral, I heard the updates. Melanie had moved back into her old bedroom at our parents' house. The perfect brick home was being sold to cover her legal fees and some of the other debts Tyler was uncovering. Her Instagram account went completely silent. The life she had built was a house of cards, and a single gust of truth had blown it all away. A week after the phone call, I ran into a woman my mother had been friends with for 30 years at the grocery store. She saw me in the produce aisle. Her face tightened into a mask of disapproval, and she deliberately turned her cart and walked away. The narrative was set. I was the cold, vengeful sister who had ruined everything. I was an outcast, and I found, to my surprise, that I was okay with it. I paid a high price for that truth, the loss of my family, the $40,000 I would never get back. But as the weeks turned into months, I realized it was the best money I had ever spent. It was cheaper than living a life where I stayed silent. It was the price of my own freedom. That fall, to celebrate my liberation, I did something I had never done before. I took a real vacation, a trip for no one but myself. I packed Gus into my car and drove north, all the way to Colorado. For 3 weeks, I rented a small cabin nestled in the aspens. I went on long hikes, the crisp mountain air filling my lungs, the only sounds the crunch of leaves under my boots and Gus panting happily beside me. I spent the evenings by a fireplace, journaling, writing down thoughts I had never allowed myself to have. October 12th, I wrote one night, the fire crackling beside me. I hiked to an alpine lake today. It was so still, it looked like a sheet of glass. I saw my reflection, and, for the first time, I didn't see the fixer or the responsible one or the good sister. I just saw me. I feel quiet. Is this what peace feels like? I think they confused my strength with a limitless capacity to absorb their problems. My strength isn't for them anymore. It's for me. Another entry a few days later. Gus chased a padar squirrel for 10 minutes straight. He didn't catch it, but he was so happy just for the chase. His tail wagged the whole time. I think for my whole life, I've been letting everyone else chase their squirrels while I just paid for the dog food. I'm going to start chasing my own. I don't know what they are yet, but I'm excited to find out. One afternoon, sitting on a sun-drenched boulder overlooking a valley of fiery gold and orange trees, I opened my banking app and checked my credit score on my phone. It was back up to 815, a simple number on a screen, but it felt like a victory. It was tangible proof that I had healed the damage, that I had restored what was mine. I had fixed my own problem. When I returned to San Antonio, my condo felt different. It was no longer a fortress to hide in. It was a home to live in. A few months later, I was at a coffee shop on a Sunday morning, reading a book, with Gus lying at my feet. At the table, next to me, a mother was laughing with her 2 adult daughters, all 3 of them sharing a piece of cake. For a second, a sharp pang of sadness hit me. A ghost of the family I thought I was supposed to have. It was a real loss, and I allowed myself to feel it. But then it passed, like a cloud moving across the sun. It was replaced by a calm, steady sense of peace. My family was broken, but I was not. I was whole. The price of admission to their club was my silence and my substance, and it was a price I was no longer willing to pay. I don't owe anyone my silence, especially when it costs me everything. Have you ever been pressured to clean up someone else's mess just because you could afford to? Have you ever had to carry a weight of shame that didn't belong to you? You are not selfish for telling the truth, and you are not wrong for stepping away to protect your own peace. Drop your story in the comments. Like and subscribe if this hit close to home, because sometimes the best repayment isn't getting your money back. It's finally letting people face the emotional debt they've created.